On May 27, 1962, 5 volunteer firefighters set garbage on fire in a Pennsylvania landfill, and 63 years later, that fire is still burning. Centralia sits above an underground inferno reaching 1,350 degrees Fahrenheit across 8 miles of abandoned coal mines. A state engineer offered to fix the problem for $175 in 1962, but officials never implemented his plan. By 1983, the estimated cost had ballooned to $663 million, so the government spent $42 million evacuating the entire town instead. 4 or 5 elderly holdouts remain today with legal permission to die there, and the story of how this happened reveals something surprising. $175. That's what a state engineer named Gordon Smith offered to charge for excavating the entire burning area in August 1962, just 3 months after the fire started. Centralia's town council never fully implemented his plan. Another man named Alonso Sanchez offered to dig out the fire completely free in exchange for the coal rights, and officials rejected that proposal too. By the time anyone understood the scope of what they faced, stopping the fire would cost $663 million. That $175 decision eventually consumed $42 million in relocations, destroyed over 500 homes, displaced more than 1,000 people, and erased a town that had existed since the 1800s. The fire will burn for another 250 years, which makes this the most expensive garbage fire in American history. Centralia sits in Columbia County, Pennsylvania, right in the heart of coal country, built on top of the Buck Mountain coal seam. This formation dates back 305 to 310 million years. At its peak in 1890, the town had 2,761 residents, 7 churches, 5 hotels, 27 saloons, 2 theaters, a bank, and 14 stores. Prosperity defined Centralia for decades. By 1962, the coal industry had declined, and roughly 1,100 to 1,500 people remained. On May 7th of that year, the Centralia Borough Council met to discuss cleaning up the town landfill before Memorial Day. And the landfill they discussed occupied an old strip mine pit measuring 300 feet wide and 75 feet long at the corner of Oddfellows Cemetery. A regional landfill inspector named George Segaritos had already warned a councilman that the pit contained unsealed holes in its walls leading directly into abandoned mine tunnels, and he recommended filling those holes with non-combustible material. The council ignored his warning entirely. On May 27th, 5 members of the Centralia Volunteer Fire Company received payment to burn trash at the landfill. They lit the garbage, doused it with water that evening, and went home without realizing that a hole in the pit wall, roughly 15 feet wide and several feet deep, connected to the maze of abandoned mines beneath the town. That's when the fire found its way underground. The geology beneath Centralia explains why 63 years of effort have accomplished nothing. 15 feet. That's how thick the Buck Mountain coal seam reaches in some places, sitting at a steep 22-degree pitch that allowed fire to descend rapidly through the formation. The abandoned mines beneath Centralia aren't just a few scattered tunnels, but an interconnected network created by over a century of rumen pillar coal extraction, with passageways averaging 50 to 75 feet in height and width. Anthracite coal burns at temperatures up to 1,350 degrees Fahrenheit, and borehole measurements have recorded readings that hot enough to melt aluminum. The real problem lies in what the fire needs to survive, which turns out to be almost nothing. Anthracite coal requires only 1 to 2% oxygen to keep burning, while ambient air contains 21%. The fire feeds itself with minimal effort. A drainage tunnel constructed in the 1860s made everything worse by lowering the mine water table by 230 feet. Coal deposits that might have remained underwater and protected became exposed to air instead. The fire would never drown itself, and no amount of water pumped from the surface could change that equation. Every effort to stop the Centralia fire failed, and the failures followed a predictable pattern of underfunding and miscalculation. August 1962 brought the first major attempt when a contractor named Bridie removed 58,580 cubic yards of earth at a cost of $20,000. The excavation breached underground chambers, allowing more oxygen to reach the fire and actually accelerating the burn. November of the same year saw another project pump crushed rock and water into boreholes at a cost of $42,420, but severe winter weather froze the equipment and pipes before the work could succeed. A fly ash barrier constructed in 1974 was already compromised 2 years earlier in 1972, when workers detected fire beyond its boundaries. By 1983, the Office of Surface Mining calculated that complete excavation would cost $663 million. the government decided relocating the entire town would be cheaper. For nearly 20 years, Centralia residents lived above a slowly spreading underground fire and noticed increasingly strange things. Mayor John Coddington discovered his gas station's underground fuel tank had reached 172 degrees Fahrenheit, while his basement floor measured 136 degrees. The heat crept closer to the surface with each passing year. The event that made national news arrived on Valentine's Day, February 14, 1981. 12-year-old Todd Domboski walked through his grandmother's backyard at 131 Locust Avenue after his mother Florence sent him to investigate why state politicians were visiting town that day. The ground beneath Todd collapsed without warning, dropping him into a sinkhole 4 feet wide and 150 feet deep. Steam at 350 degrees Fahrenheit billowed around him, carrying lethal concentrations of carbon monoxide, and Todd grabbed onto tree roots while his 14-year-old cousin, Eric Wolfgang, pulled him to safety. Congressman James Nelligan and Governor Dick Thornburg happened to be touring Centralia at that exact moment, which turned a local near tragedy into overnight national news. Todd Domboski survived that fall but suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and nightmares for the rest of his life. On February 4, 2022, he died at age 53 from a medication overdose related to his condition. $42 million. That's what Congress appropriated in December 1983 for voluntary relocation, roughly $127 million in 2024 dollars, with Representative Frank Harrison of Wilkes-Barre sponsoring the legislation. Between 1985 and 1991, the government acquired and demolished 545 residences and businesses, relocating more than 1,000 people at an average cost of $52,000 per household. Florence Domboski, Todd's mother, described what this relocation actually meant for her family. The state bought their house in the first wave, but depreciated its value by 20% because of the mine fire, and the government provided no help with the physical move itself. She moved by car because she couldn't afford a moving van. In 1992, Governor Bob Casey invoked eminent domain on all remaining properties and condemned 53 homes still occupied by residents who refused to leave. Years of court battles followed, including Pennsylvania Supreme Court rulings in September and December of 1995. The U.S. Postal Service revoked Centralia's zip code, 17927, in 2002. Governor Ed Rendell began formal evictions in 2009. Not everyone accepted the government's offers, and a small group of residents fought for decades to stay in their homes. On October 29, 2013, the final 7 or 8 remaining residents reached a settlement with the state. $218,000 for property values, plus $131,500 for additional claims, along with something called life estate agreements. These agreements permitted the holdouts to remain in their homes until death, at which point their property transfers to the Commonwealth and their homes get demolished. Carl Womer served as Centralia's last official mayor, a World War II veteran who lived his entire life in town before dying in 2014. His wife Helen had been an early activist against relocation before her own death in 2001. Tom Hynoski currently serves as Fire Chief, Emergency Management Agency Director and Borough Secretary, maintaining the structure of municipal government with a budget that stays in the black because the highest monthly bill runs approximately $92 to PPL Electric. 4 to 5 residents remain in Centralia today, making it the least populated municipality in Pennsylvania. The grid of empty streets remains visible from above, with sidewalks, curbs, and front steps warped and upturned by decades of thermal stress. Smoke occasionally rises through graves at Oddfellows Cemetery, and trees and vegetation have begun reclaiming former residential blocks. Route 61's abandoned section, closed in 1993 due to subsidence and steam, became known as Graffiti Highway after visitors began covering the cracked asphalt with spray paint. By 2017, that stretch ranked as Pennsylvania's 6th most visited attraction. On April 6, 2020, the private owner Pagnotti Enterprises had Fox Coal Company dump approximately 9,000 tons of dirt to bury the 1-mile stretch. Fire Chief Tom Hynoski welcomed the burial, noting that visitors from New York, New Jersey, and everywhere else treated the site like a dump. The 2006 film Silent Hill drew direct inspiration from Centralia. Screenwriter Roger Avery researched the town extensively, and director Christoph Gans stated they used what happened to Centralia to feed the mythology of their film. The Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection still conducts monthly visual inspections and annual borehole temperature monitoring, having drilled over 2,000 boreholes since 1966. The fire continues burning at depths up to 300 feet over an 8-mile stretch, advancing at roughly 50 to 75 feet per year. Scientists project it will burn for another 100 to 250 years until it exhausts the estimated 3,700 acres of coal deposits beneath the surface. The Assumption of the Blessed Mary, Ukrainian Catholic Church, built in 1911, still holds weekly services in a town with almost no one left to attend. Centralia's tragedy isn't unique because of the fire itself, since Pennsylvania has at least 30 burning mine fires right now. What makes this disaster different is the systematic failure to act when action was cheap. A $175 excavation in 1962 could have prevented everything that followed. Bureaucratic delay, underfunded projects, and scientific miscalculation turned a landfill accident into a 250-year disaster. The remaining residents of Centralia are elderly, isolated, and legally permitted only to die in their homes. When the last of them passes, the Commonwealth will demolish their houses and Centralia will exist only as a burning underground warning about what happens when a $175 problem gets ignored long enough to become a $663 million catastrophe. If you found this story worth your time, consider subscribing for more geographic disasters and forgotten places like this one.